Today on the AI Operator, we're talking about AI agents, and not just as a buzzword, but as an actual workforce. Our guest, Dr. Alok Yashwant Shukla, if I'm pronouncing that right, I'll give you some time to correct me on that, a health tech inventor and innovator, AI entrepreneur, and co-founder, CEO of Implement AI, a UK-based company that's deploying managed AI agents into the heart of everyday businesses. From outbound sales to real-time coaching to 24/7 support, his digital workforce is transforming how companies scale without adding headcount. And he's not new to innovation. Dr. Shukla is also the co-founder of Straight Teeth Direct, a global direct-to-consumer dental platform operating in 60 plus countries, and Instant Dentist, which helped pioneer remote dental care. With Implement AI, he's taken that systems thinking approach from health tech and applied it to revenue operations, customer success, internal operations. Using AI agents like Ava, Dex, Lexi, and Arlo to eliminate inefficiency, unlock growth, and reimagine what operations really look like. He's also the co-host of the AI Assisted Organization podcast, where he's shaping the future of AI-enabled businesses, one insight at a time. If you're wondering how to actually implement AI into your workflows, not in theory, but in practice, this episode is going to be a must listen. Welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
I'm great, Jordan. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. So we got connected on LinkedIn, and I'm really excited to learn more about what you guys are doing. I know you got a very early start in AI agents, and back then it was much more complicated than it is today. You have things like N8N that allow people to, build out, agents so quickly. And then you also have a bunch of white labeled services that kind of lay over the top of other ones that make it even easier. So obviously you've built some successful businesses in both health tech and now AI. I'm really interested. What was like the through line that led you from remote orthodontics to launching a company that builds AI agents?
That's a great question. I mean, basically, it's the same principle of deconstructing a workflow and then digitizing it and applying technology to it. So back in 2017, 2018, we'd built a system where you could use mobile phone photos, use AI to analyze it, reconstruct in 3D, and do different elements of like diagnostics and simulation and different stuff like that. And so that same approach, even with manufacturing, rather than doing things in a manual way, we use robotics to actually do some different steps. So really, it's a question of like, how do you deconstruct a system and then digitize it and then get it working the right way and then apply automation on top of it. So it's really the same sort of approach, essentially. Like every business owner is always thinking, how can I get more done in a consistent way? How can I get things more done easier? And really, I think with AI, the whole promise of it, when we saw how things changed really in 2023 was like, how can you help every business almost have like an infinitely scalable workforce? Like everybody's overwhelmed. There's so many channels. There's like social media. There's like, phone, WhatsApp, everything, Telegram, whatever it is, email. And it's like, people just have limited bandwidth. So the question is like, how can you help turn that into like digital work? So that was our idea from the beginning, basically.
I love that. And I love the connection. I'm a big believer in principles in business and, how they can be applied across different industries, different technologies, even different job roles. And something I really like that you're talking about is, how do we increase the capacity for a business to do what they do best while not increasing headcount? And I know that scares, maybe a lot of people out there, but I'm a really big believer that the more of the nuanced items that we can automate in a business and a person's job role, that it gives them much more opportunity to be not just autonomous, but creative. It brings creativity
Absolutely.
back into their role. So
They can be more present. Like basically, like, I mean, if you think of the example, right? Like say your job is to follow up with some customers that maybe like called a business but didn't book in. So this is an example of one of our AI agents, right? So quite often there's like a manager at one of the businesses that looks after like 9 locations, and she's always looking and listening to like some of the calls, who maybe showed interest but didn't book an appointment, for example. And the team is working hard. They're doing their best, right? They've got many things that's going on. So one of our AI agents, for example, listens to all the phone calls, spots who was talking about a high value opportunity, but didn't book an appointment, and then creates a short list. That list can then go to the team member. Now, it can also include notes. Like, for example, there was one chap who was interested in like a 15K service, but he was confused and he was playing golf and about to go on holiday at the time, right? And literally the AI agent picked that element out and then forwarded it to one of the team members. So then the team member can actually say when they reach out, because if they'd rather than reaching out cold, they'd be like, actually, I knew you were playing golf last time. You're a bit confused about it. Let me take the time to explain it. So they're actually supported, so they can actually do their job better, if that makes sense, basically, right? And I think that the more you've got AI working within you, you will hire more people. There's just no doubt about it, because you need people that will coordinate and oversee what the AIs are doing, basically, right? Because
Yep.
humans have a dimension of, like the ability to have peripheral vision and oversee different things or think in different dimensions, which AI just won't do. But AI is fantastic within defined workflows and even to like kind of coordinate bits of data as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and I like that you kind of mentioned like it's about focused work, and like they're really able to just do what they do best. So now most people talk about AI in theory, and you've obviously implemented it across multiple industries and able to tie it into different things. What was the turning point that made you say AI agents are the future of the workforce?
I think one of the first breakthroughs was voice, basically. So we were quite early with AI voice agents, and for me, that really kind of caught my imagination because it's like a concrete thing. Like, I mean, I think there was a nice article by like A16Z where like basically phone calls are the API to the world, basically, right? So if you want to try to connect to another human, it's like you do it through the phone or through WhatsApp or whatever like that, basically. And like I think when I started seeing and listening to like how well they performed, and then we apply voice agents across many industries, ranging from HVAC to healthcare to recruitment to logistics or whatever it is, basically, right? Like e-commerce. But the key thing is like most people when they're talking on the phone don't even realize they're talking to an AI agent, basically, right? Like, and so I think like
Yeah.
we passed the Turing test a while ago, and to me it's quite exciting when you can start doing things which a human just couldn't do, which is like having a phone call, then sending the customer a WhatsApp message and asking for a photo of an object, analyzing the photo of the object, and then describing to them products that could be beneficial for them, or
Yeah.
being on a phone call and looking up the appointment scheduling or like the product list and stuff. So to me, it's just that real time intelligence, but you can it does the work for you, so you're not having to do everything. And I think for me that caught my attention. That was like, this is a real thing, right? Like, and then from that we just started sort of like doubling down and kind of like looking at like more ways to apply it and increasing sophistication of skills that we can apply to the agents as well.
I love that. I'm really excited for IVR systems to never be a thing anymore. I would much rather talk to a smart AI agent
Yeah,
than an IVR system. The
and
amount
they
of
can't solve
time.
everything, but at least then it can
Yeah.
pass you off, or it can at least take detailed notes of whatever it is and give you the info.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah. I mean, you call American Express and the amount of time. Actually, they're pretty good. American Express is pretty good. But Bank of America, for example, is one of my banks, and oh my gosh, it is such a waste of time. So I'm actually excited for that. And then something you mentioned about the guy, who was golfing is such a good use case. We implemented for a lot of our clients too a similar AI. We were just simply trying to reduce the cost of needing things like attention AI and Gong and all these different things,
yeah,
and just like, can we do it simple and achieve 90% of what the goal of those items were? And one of those was very similar to what you mentioned. It was basically a buyer intent and deal risk. So the goal was shorten, the feedback loop between like the sales manager and a sales rep, because how
yeah.
many deals are we actually leaving on the table because we missed one key thing in the conversation? And how many of those clients can we actually call back real quick and hop on the phone with them and go close that deal? So I love that. Most companies don't really know where to start with AI, has been my experience recently. What would you say is a good first step for a business that wants to begin implementing and integrating digital workers into their workforce?
So I think, like, I always think very clearly that you've got to have a good business case for whatever you're doing, right? Like, otherwise you're just, spending attention and resource in a place which could be better spent, right? Like, and there's a kind of a phrase like, that's from a book from a guy that coached the British rowing team, was like, will it make the boat go faster, basically, right? So whatever you do, It's like, will it make the boat go faster? Like, will waking up early in the morning and having the right breakfast make the boat go faster? Yes, it will if you like stay lean. Will this workout help make the boat go faster because you'll increase your rowing strength or whatever like that? So in the same way, we focus on the two main axes. One is driving revenue, the other one's reducing costs, basically, right? And when I say reducing costs, I'm talking about like also freeing up capacity to reallocate people or whatever like that, basically. So driving revenue tends to be one of the use cases we focus on quite a lot because many people are trying to do that, right? And then that might be something as simple as a customer reactivation campaign. So you could have like a database of people that have not bought from you in a while and they could be interested, or you got a load of leads that nothing ever happened. But maybe if you call them on a weekend or an evening, maybe some of those people could reactivate, right? So customer reactivation campaigns are generally quite a good place to start. Then there's other places which might be, let's say, like the call analyst thing that we talked about, which could be like going back over the last few months of calls and spotting hidden opportunities or missed opportunities. Another great place to start in that kind of thing. So again, kind of focused on revenue protection and kind of going in that way. Other dimensions that could be interesting could be in terms of two ways. One, we call like a 24/7 department, which is basically like how to scale up a department to kind of make it more accessible to the people it needs to support. And that it includes having a knowledge base agent on there, which has got like all the information it needs to be. And that can be supported and served by either chat, voice, or email or whatever like that. But the point there is like, let's say, for example, someone's just joined your company and it's like, okay, we'll give an example for a law firm. They've got a client who's Russian, for example, right? The Russian client needs to have these kind of checks. There's like a policy document. You need to have verify A, B, C, D, E, F, G, for example. Or we were talking about a healthcare recruiter earlier today, and there needs to be 76 checks that need to be done before someone's eligible to be a nurse on their books to be able to be hired, right? So again, it's like, how can you actually have an agent which could be responsible for like that checklist and then follow up with those questions and do that? So right now that takes a lot of time from people. Or for example, with the Russian document, how could you have an agent which can tell you step 1, step 2, step 3, do it like this way again? So again, it's like kind of augmenting that department and help make it easier for the people to kind of get more stuff done in that way. And then you've got the other dimensions of like customer support, customer success, making it like weekends, evenings accessible, maybe multilingual, maybe even adding other steps to kind of, once you've had a conversation, even suggest to you other things you could kind of get benefits from. Those tend to be kind of like the good places to start, if that makes sense, basically, right?
No, it makes total sense. And I want to connect the dots for the listeners there. You mentioned two of the main kind of pathways, and then like we like to look at a third, which is, churn, which is really customer success, and if you have a great customer experience, a great onboarding experience for your clients, you can reduce churn. So to me, it's increasing revenue, reducing churn, and then reducing internal costs. And for anyone listening that is trying to implement a system, tying it back to whatever that metric is that you're trying to increase, helps you really get a good cost analysis on, is this $15,000 implementation worth it? It might sound like a lot, but over the course of 30 days, you've probably already saved that amount in revenue. And then you get to run this thing over and over and over, and it's ultimately scalable, which, may help, people when they're going to, make a buying decision about, agents and workflows and stuff like that, be able to break it down and simplify that a little bit.
That makes sense. And there's also like, you asked like where companies should start. So like they're definitely the place you should start. But there's another dimension which some companies might want to approach. And that is like, what can you do that you couldn't do before? So in that dimension, you're actually like not even looking at like what you kind of got going on. You're thinking what we call AI first, essentially, right? So I always say to people, if you're starting your business today, AI first, what would that look like, basically, right? So then it might be like, okay, I was talking to one company earlier today. They've got a lot of proprietary knowledge on some specific construction in very specific ways, basically. For example, right now they've got very high cost consultants, but there's only a few number of consultants and they can't do more than that, basically, right? So we were talking with them about like how they could actually like basically productize that knowledge by loading that into a knowledge base agent, having different details. And they also had like lots of companies inquiring to get guidance on specific issues, which they've got expertise on, but they don't have the bandwidth to do it. So they're talking about potentially offering a subscription model where they could get access to that kind of help desk and those questions and stuff like this, and then support it. So again, it's like, how do you turn a service into a product, and how do you do stuff that you couldn't do before, basically, as well? So
I love that. And obviously we are a consulting agency, so we have a lot of customer requests, very similar to that coming across the board of, hey, can we get you guys, on a 40 hours per week, or And the answer a lot of times is simply no. We just wouldn't have the bandwidth, and we can't divert that much resources. So, like you said, that's a huge opportunity to, be able to expedite that. Um, what surprised you most after deploying agents inside of real companies? Were there any like unexpected wins or failures, or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
a
yeah.
funny
So
story?
definitely, like, so I always like, so there was one company where we did like some call campaigns which reactivated people who would register for an event but didn't turn up, basically, and went quite successfully, and it was quite nice. And then when they passed the leads to the sales team called those people, and the guy who was like in charge of that business called me and said, "Alok, the sales team said that they can't reach these people." I said, "Okay, that's interesting." Because like some of them had like 4-minute conversations with the AI, for example, like telling them exactly like what their plans are for everything and stuff. And then he goes, "Yeah, like they said, like we just can't reach these people." I said, "What time did they call them?" They said like 11 in the morning, and I was like, "Yeah, but these people are probably working or something like that, right?" Like, so I think what, but like it's so what I realize is that like, and now they're doing it a different way where the AI calls the person and just transfers the call basically, right? Immediately, like to a person. So what I'm trying to say is like, I think what you have to understand is that you got to think through all the steps of the deployment, even though the customer said that they're interested on the phone, to get that customer transacted, basically, there's still another couple of steps which might require a person or whatever like that. So I think like sometimes, you have to like approach it in a bit more of a kind of systems approach, and also say to them that like, you might need to have a person in the evening. So that's what they said. I said to them, you need to have a person in the evening.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like it's not going to be like for like, basically. And they're like, no, no, I get it. So I think sometimes if they're open to re-engineering their processes, which we always kind of guide them on, then those things can be like that in that way, essentially.
Yeah. I talk a lot about having context to the problem you're trying to solve. And that's even with, AI. If you're just starting out and you're using ChatGPT, that you still have to have the context of the problem you're
Of
trying
course.
to solve. And the more context you have, the easier it is to solve it, especially with AI. But I'm interested. You obviously work across a lot of different industries, similar to us. We, work with a lot of different industries, but between like SaaS, retail, healthcare, fintech, what industry would you say is, I guess, the furthest behind in bringing AI into their world, or the furthest ahead? What would you say?
It's a big, there's a big, the big range, right? Like naturally the companies that come to us, they're already forward thinking, right? So they're kind of like a self-selecting group, right?
Yeah,
But if I just operate from that, there are, like quite outdated systems in some, healthcare businesses where like, their systems don't have any APIs, and even the provider of the software won't even provide any access to the database and stuff like that, like, so I think healthcare has some of those challenges, but then equally with some other industries, like for example, with some HVAC companies we work with, they've got everything on a spreadsheet basically, right? But then that's how they like it, right? Like that's how it works for them. And I remember one person said, because they've got a spreadsheet, for example, to manage certain types of like emergency call outs and stuff like this. And it's like based on the dates of like who's on call and all that kind of stuff. And the lady said to me, goes, yeah, we've always had this sheet. The sheet's been here since before I joined, basically. So I'm like, okay, cool. So that's what you got, and that it works for you, right? That's fair enough. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So we just need to integrate with that and kind of do it in that way, basically. But I mean, I think like I've had some early conversations with a few insurance companies, and I can see with insurance and in some financial services like loans and different stuff, there's a lot of opportunity because like it's basically a completely digital service, and you're trying to evaluate things, and you're capturing information basically. So I think there where you can like have this kind of concept of like a 24/7 agent that can just ask questions, make it easy, pre-fill forms, that can help a lot, I think. Like, so
definitely. Yeah, I've seen. I think for us, the biggest lack of technology in general, not just AI, is a lot of the mom and pop, blue collar,
sure.
company, HVAC, roofing, automotive, seem to be sometimes so far stuck in the past that it's probably overwhelming to even consider uh, updating anything. Um, excuse me. Um, but I do have some questions, obviously related to your personal life, because as a multi-time founder, hosting a podcast, running a business. Um, there's a lot happening. And I'm always interested with how people personally stay focused, stay sharp, stay healthy, and kind of the habits surrounding that that help you, operate at the level you're operating at. What would be the three things you could give our listeners that, really kind of set you apart and allow you to do what you do?
I mean, I think like you're right. Like you have to have when you've got like a very varied work schedule or time, or like the last 2 weeks, I was traveling quite a bit with our own event we launched in the UK, and then I was in New York for a conference and different stuff like this. So when you got lots of things kind of going on, I think you want as much kind of regularity as possible in kind of sleep schedule. So I try to go sleep early, the right time at the same time every day. I track my kind of like sleep with my Aura and like different stuff. So I'm always trying to make sure that's kind of going good. Nutrition, try and be as healthy as possible, take whatever supplements and stuff that need to be. Also, I meditate, so that's quite important because like otherwise you can get too much kind of digital overload from all the things kind of going on, and also like the wide variety of things that we have to like be able to like focus and go deep on. And like you said, like I have to be able to like get deep into deep context with I don't know a recruitment agency about one thing, but then in a separate situation to do with like pharmacy based on some specific drug elements that they need to have. So the ability to like almost like protect that mind space a little bit is important, but I think honestly, it's just trying to be as healthy as possible around it. I think that's the main stuff essentially. And then also like using AI myself, like, where I can, to just make things easier for me or capture ideas and leverage my time. So, yeah.
Makes a ton of sense. I love that you meditate. I don't do a ton of meditation. I do more journaling, which is, kind of along a similar line. And that one really just helps me kind of brain dump and get my thoughts out on the paper. Because to your point, sometimes there's so much noise,
Correct.
that it's hard to work through if you don't have a way to release that. Um, what would you say is like the top supplement, your favorite supplement?
I mean, for me, it's more that I have to because I'm vegetarian, right? So I know
Okay.
that like my B and a few things like that are a bit lower, so I need to take those ones. But I mean, really, I think it's just like yeah, just from nutrition perspective, essentially, right? Like,
Yeah. Makes sense. Um, hobbies. I interviewed a guest. His name's Christian. He has a software for cold email. A good friend of mine, and he made a TikTok video that actually went super viral. It ended up on the news. It was kind of funny, but it was this conversation about third spaces, is what he called it. And the third space is you have work, you have home, and then you have this third space, hobbies, basically. And his concern is that a lot of millennials don't have a third space. They don't have a community like they used to. Um, what would you say are, some of your hobbies, if you have some, or, what is that third space for you?
I guess like for me, like there's a few things. Like I've got some friends which I like hang out with now and again or read, but really I like playing chess. Like so I was in New York recently for a conference and like in Bryant Park, they actually have like an area where people can like
Yeah.
go and play chess. And so I went there a few days and it was really cool. You meet some like people you never would have met before and you have like so, a few games and it's good fun. So yeah, for me that was pretty cool because I met some interesting people doing that essentially. So
That's amazing. Now, I do have a question regarding healthcare specifically, and this is a world that I'm not involved in at all. So bear with me. But what is interesting is the difference of, you have dentists, you have doctors, medical doctors, and then you have practice owners. And from what I've seen and heard, there's a big difference of practice owners and doctors, and a lot of times they are not the same people, right? Um, what do you think for any like medical professionals listening? What do you think is separating someone, a business guy coming in and building a practice, building a telehealth, practice? Why are they able to do that so well? And what is the difference between a traditional dentist or doctor that struggles to connect those two?
have you heard of a book called The E Myth?
I have amazing book.
Yeah. So the whole point there is like it's like the entrepreneur myth that most businesses are set up by entrepreneurs. I mean, this book was written in like I think the 80s or 90s or something like
Yeah.
that, basically, right? Like, but the whole point there was like most businesses are started by technicians suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. So to come to your point, like any kind of like medical professional is kind of a technician, right? Like you're really expert in whatever you're doing. You know how to diagnose, you know how to treat, You learn all the stuff. You keep up to date with the latest. And it doesn't matter where it's like a osteo, chiro, physio, derm. It's the same thing basically, right? It's like you've mastered your domain and you understand those things. So obviously being able to like interact with the patient one-on-one, that's one thing. Working with your team member, that your assistant, that's another thing, right? But then to build an enterprise around you, which can also have like that patient experience, maybe work with other doctors, maybe other doctors who don't have the same philosophy exactly as you and stuff. You just got to be able to like coordinate more moving parts essentially, right? So there are many brilliant doctors that can create like their own successful practice as well. But then I think the difference with a business person is they're looking at all the systems and all the boxes from the start, right? They're thinking like, how is the, patient going to come across us? What's the outside of the store going to look like? What's the journey going to be internally? What services we're going to offer? What's in demand in this area? Because also a doctor might just be like, I like this and I want to live here.
Yeah.
And then they do that basically, right? But
Yep.
there might be loads of other people that like that and live in that area too. And then they've got like so much competition, isn't it? Right. Versus like someone else might be looking at it and saying, yeah, what does this area need? Actually, it needs a late night and evening thing, but the doctor doesn't want to do late nights and evenings, right? So it comes down to like what the market forces are and what the market requires in terms of kind of operations versus what you as an individual practitioner want to kind of do. So there's a kind of disconnect in those two things potentially. It doesn't have to be, but like there's a whole different dimension to consider, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Relating it back to the E-Myth, and like I said, fantastic book. If we have people listening that have not read that book, and you do anything with business, I would highly recommend it. E-Myth it's about working on the business versus in the business, and
Exactly.
why that transition is so hard. To your point with the technician, um, yeah, that makes total sense. So, I would love to do a kind of rapid fire couple questions if we can to close this up. We've covered so many different things. I appreciate you sharing everything you have so far. For the rapid fire, what is one thing that most business leaders get wrong about AI?
They think it can do everything. They think that like this thing can do this plus do this and do that as if it's like an amorphous thing. You have to actually think in terms of systems like input, output, what goes in, what goes out, and then you can define what happens in the middle. So you can make it do lots of things, but one thing will not do multiple things, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense, at least to me. And if you're listening, you listen back over that because that was a big piece right there. If someone could only automate one thing today, what would it be?
I think the sales and business development function, right?
Sales, yeah.
Revenue solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, definitely. So BDR actions, sales generating activities.
Even customer success, expanding, clients. And I just want to give a caveat to that. When I say that, I don't mean necessarily just like scaling your email outbound or whatever it is, which is important too, right? I'm also talking about like offering like higher dimensions because like with AI, you can increase volume, but you can also increase quantity, but you can also increase quality. So for example, like let's say you want to target people that meet 26 different dimensions. You could, for example, when someone's opted in, you could research them. A system could look them up. You could find out lots of information about their house, their area, their business, other customers they worked with, even like, what they've posted on LinkedIn. So you could then put together a very knowledgeable thing about what they've got and then be much more useful and specific to them with whatever you recommend, basically, right? So I'm just trying to say that like, in that kind of dimension, basically.
Yeah, you can go for more. You can go broad, like higher volume, or you can go deeper. So I actually just made a LinkedIn post about that a couple days ago, which was one of the biggest issues we see where you have hundreds of leads coming in, and you don't need more leads. You don't need to spend more money on ads most of the time. You need to find out a better way to filter through those and nurture those and
Correct.
work the leads that you
Have
actually
meaningful
have.
conversations.
Yeah. Yep. So amazing. Fast forward 3 years. What does the ideal AI assistant or assisted organization actually look like?
I think you've got like, I think 3 years from now, like, so kind of what we've built, like, so there's kind of three dimensions to it. There's the agent teams, there's the agentic CRM, and then there's like the task engine as well. So I think like 3 years from now, it'd be amazing to like each department almost has its different agents, which is like there. So you just join a company, the agent reaches out to you like, hey, welcome to join, I'm here to help you get set up with whatever you want. So almost everyone's got their own kind of like concierge or assistant, which is like helping them and help them stay one step ahead of whatever you're doing, basically, right? Like, I think I think that's the way I would see it. And then also literally you don't waste anything. So if someone said, "Oh, don't call me now, call me in 3 months," then it's automatically scheduled and done in there. And then a week before that's pinged and saying "Hey, I know you were interested 3 months ago, but now is the right time." Is I'm trying to say literally you turn from information to action. There's no gap. There's no gap between those basically, right? So you're on point basically.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to shorten the gap between everything, like in all ways. I think that's a great way to sum it up. So awesome. Dr. Alok, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing as much as you have. Where can people find you if they want to have a conversation with you, check out your AI agents? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can connect on me on LinkedIn. So it's Alok Y Shukla on LinkedIn, basically. So that's one thing. Or you can visit us at implementai.io. And get in touch with us from there, basically, right? But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you should be able to connect with me there.
Amazing. I love it. We'll include those links in the description of this podcast so you guys can check those out. Make sure to give Dr. Alok a follow, message him on LinkedIn, connect, ask any questions you have. And, I'm really excited to see where these agents, move to in the future. And how many people's hands we can get this stuff into, because I feel like, kind of back to your volume and depth situation, AI agents are going to go deeper. They're going to get, much, much better, but they're also going to be more accessible to, the everyday user, which is really cool. So it's kind of hitting on both of those. And you've really been at the forefront of that. So absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. If you did enjoy this episode, go ahead and subscribe, and share if you so will. But Dr. Alok, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much, Jordan.